What up, YouTube? It's your boy Big Al right back at you with another video. What we're doing on this video right here, guys, is we're going to do a number 2 with a zero taper comb over with a hard line. As you can see, this gentleman right here has a lot of hair on the side of his hair. He has over an 8, maybe probably a 10 on the sides. Well, there is no 10, but that's what I call it when they have more than an 8. So what I'm doing starting off right here is I'm going with the number 4, and what I'm doing with the number 4 is I'm just going up the sides of the head and just basically knocking off all the bulk. Going up around the sides, all the way to the crown and the sides of the head. On most haircuts, when I start them off, when they have an abundance amount of hair like this, I always start off with a number 4. And like I said before, I just go up with my number 4, and what I'm doing is just basically taking down the bulk. Because what we're doing on this gentleman is we're going to do a number 2 on the sides. So of course you can't do a number 2 when the hair is a number 8 or more, you know what I mean? So what I like to do is go with a number 4 and just basically go up to the side of the crown of the head and just take off all the bulk. As you can tell, his hair is really long. So when I get to the crown of around the head, the crown of the head, which is the area where a crown would sit if you had a crown around the head, that's what I call the crown. When I go up to that area, what I do is that long hair, I pull the machine and I pull it up, as you can see, and I pull it right up so that it just falls evenly along the sides of the head. So what I'm doing here now is I grab my number 2 Oster metal clip, and basically I'm creating my first guide, and what I'm doing is I'm just taking everything below it. I'm just going up right about, if you can see right there, it's almost eye level, and I'm going to use that guide all the way around. A number 2 Oster. Now I'm going to give you some advice about the Osters, guys. If you're a young barber, I notice a lot of young barbers, they don't even have Osters. I mean, if you don't have an Oster, guys, you guys need to get one, because the difference between a number 2 Oster and a plastic clip number 2, I mean, if I was using a plastic clip right here, you would know the difference. It would not take it down that low and that smooth and that evenly. So I always recommend that, especially when you're starting off, you start off with an Oster. You get your Oster, get your sharper blades, invest in your work. The faster, more efficient you can do your haircuts, the more money you're going to make. So why wouldn't you want to work easier instead of working harder? And doing this process, what I'm doing right here, if I was using a plastic clip, it would take me twice as long and it would not come out that smooth. The next step for me here, guys, is what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my clipper over comb, and basically what I'm going to do is now start blending in the sides. And what I'm doing here is I'm blending basically from a number 2 to a number 4, because you remember we started off with a number 4 clip, then we went up with a number 2. So basically what you're doing is you're blending out from a number 2 to a number 4, clipper over comb. Now, of course, mind you, you could do this with clips, and it would probably take me a little longer to do, but for me, being at the level of barbering that I am, I feel that clipper over comb is the fastest, more efficient way to doing it. So this is the way I'm teaching it. So basically what I'm doing right here is just I'm smoothing it out. Smoothing from a number 2 to a number 4. I can easily say that this haircut right here was probably the most popular haircut of 2017. Was a clipper over comb, taper, with a hard line, and usually a lineup. This guy's not getting a lineup, but usually it's a lineup. That's usually what we do on this haircut, you know, and this has been a very, very popular haircut, you know. So getting back to the haircut here, mind you, what I did right there is I went with the number 2 Oster again, and I'm just making sure that my wall is nice and smooth. And what I'm doing right here is clipper over combing and just working on that side right there. Doesn't look quite done yet, but you'll see right here, it all takes shape as we go along. So right here I start off in the back, and I'm again just clipper over combing, going from a number 2 to the number 4. Again, guys, right there what I did is I just pushed all the hair forward, because his hair is very long on top, so I just pushed it forward so I can know what I'm blending up. And right here, as you can see, what I'm gonna do is push all the hair to the other side. Although the comb over is coming towards the left, I'm pushing the hair to the other way. And the reason being is that way I can blend in that wall right there very smoothly. When I do my clipper over comb, I always prefer to start towards the bottoms. As you can see, I start from the bottom where I'm already at the number 2. And what I do is I lift up and I lift from there and I lift up and pull out. And as I go up, I lift a little bit less and pull up so that it blends in a round pattern. This is a good opportunity to explain to you guys that sometimes customer comes in and what they want on this comb over is they're gonna want sideburns, and I recommend, like to my customers, I always recommend when they're getting a comb over, especially if they're getting a hardline, you take off the sideburns and taper up the sideburns and taper up the back. And the reason being is that it just looks like a nicer haircut. And I don't know about your place where you work at, but on my shop we charge a little bit more for tapers over regulars. So I always recommend, not only for the financial part, but because I know that it's going to look better and the customer is going to be more satisfied and willing to come back. So now when we're moving along with the haircut right here, what I'm doing is I grab my trimmer, and what I'm doing is just knocking off the sideburns. Knocking off the sideburn and going up the side of the wall to the back. Just getting all my guidelines ready for the taper coming up. And then quickly I switch to the other side, and now I'm creating my guideline for the taper on the other side. And you can see that the wall is a number 2, and all I'm doing is knocking it off down to a 0 and creating my guideline. And from there is where I'm going to taper up. Now we're moving to the back. The same thing with our trimmer. What we're going to do is create our 3 guidelines. We created our guideline on the right side of the taper, on the left side of the taper, and now we're going to create the back side of the taper. And basically what I do is I create my guideline all the way across, and from that point I taper upwards. At the same time right here, I take an opportunity to clean up his neck and straighten out all my lines. Remember, a taper has 2 lines, right side and the left side. That's why it was called a 2-line taper back in the day. And those are the lines that we define at the end. So now quickly right here we move over to our 1.5, which is a 1 with the lever open. And what I'm doing is blending that 1.5 into the number 2. Once I do that, I lower my lever to a number 1, and I'm just basically working on the bottom line of the taper right there. Now I take off my clip, and I'm going to go with my half. Lever open, which is a half, and I'm going up about 3/4 of an inch to an inch up. And as I go up, I lower my lever a quarter of the way, and I start working my fade downward. Then I lower the quarter way more, and I come all the way down to where my machine is closed, and I take out the bottom line. Now I grab my trimmer, and what I'm doing is I'm just tapping the bottom line, breaking off that bottom shadow. Now the next step is for me to grab my machine with no lever on, halfway open, and I'm just basically working the center shadow right below my half line. Now I grab my half clip, lever open, and I'm gonna just rake the center shadow. As I rake it, I lower my lever a quarter of the way, and I keep raking that center shadow, just blending it off. Then finally I close it, and I'm just basically just dotting that center shadow so it all blends in. And what we have right there is a 0 taper to a number 2. Now we move to the other side. Once again, I start off with my number 1, lever open, which makes it a 1.5. And what I'm doing is just going around the ear and going up, blending it in with a number 2. Once I do that, I close my lever and made it a number 1 with the lever open. Same thing, just raking that center, that bottom line. Now I grab my machine with no clip on, with the half, which is with the lever open. I'm going to go up 3/4 of an inch up. As I do that, I lower my lever a quarter of the way and working my way down until I have the machine completely closed. Now I grab my trimmer, and what I'm doing is just raking that bottom line and erasing that line. Now again, I grab my machine, halfway open on the lever, and I'm just raking the bottom center shadow below the half line. Now I'm going to grab my half clip, lever open, and I'm just going to rake that center shadow. As I rake it across, I'm going to lower my lever a quarter of the way and just rake in the center shadow until it erases, blending it all in. What we have there now is a 0 taper to a number 2, once again, just like we did on the other side. Now we move on to the back of the head, and the same steps as we did on the side of the head. We're going to start off with our number 1, lever open. We're going to go up about 2 inches. The number 1 blends into the number 2, so there should be no line there. Once you go up with that number 1, it should just automatically blend in. Once you go all the way across, on this, what I did on here is I went all the way across on one side, then I go and I work on the other side. And once I did that, I lowered my lever all the way till close, and now what it is a 1, and I'm only going to go up half of the way up that I went when I went with my 1.5. Blending the 1 into the 1.5 and the 1.5 into the number 2. Now I grab my machine right here, lever open, no clip on, and I'm going to go up 3/4 of the way. As you can see, this is almost all blending in right here. I just lower my lever a quarter of the way, and as I'm lowering, I'm going across the line and just blending out that bottom shadow until I get to where the machine is closed now, and I'm just dotting the bottom line. Now I grab my half clip, lever open, and I'm going to go back up to where I went with my number 2, because our half blends into the number 1, our 1 blends into the 1.5. So again, 1.5, the half clip, lever open, which makes it 3/4 of an inch, going up to where we went with a 1.5. And all blends right in, as you guys can see right here. Like I was telling you guys before, guys, this used to be called a 2-line taper, and the reason being is because there's no sideburns and no back line, and only the two defined lines on each side of the ear. And what I'm doing right here is I grab my number 2 Oster, and I'm just basically blending out any little dark spots that I see in the side of the head, because we started off with a number 2 originally. So now we're moving on to the top, guys, and what we're doing right here is basically just adding water. And as you guys know in my videos, I add a lot of water. I'm very generous with the water. I like to have the hair very, very moist when I cut it with the scissors. The reason being is I just feel that it's easier to maneuver and easier to grab when the hair is moist compared to when the hair is dry. So I usually get it very, very wet. And what I'm doing right here is, you guys can tell his hair is very long. It's probably maybe 5 inches on top. So what I did is I started off with my first guide, and I start off in the middle, and I took off about maybe 2 inches, and as I move my way back, I take a little bit more than I did from the front. The front has to be longer, the back has to be shorter. When you're cutting somebody's hair that's this long, you know, you have to start off slow. You can't start off taking off big chunks of hair. You have to kind of take off a little bit as you go along, and as you see it taking shape, you could tell that it needs to take more and more, so you just take a little bit more. So what I do is I started off taking off 2 inches, and as you can see now, I went back and I took off another inch. So now we went from being 5 inches on top to maybe being 3 inches on top. I started off in the front, and the way I do it is I basically break the head into 3 sections and when there's just this much hair. And I did the top of the head first, and now I move my way to the right side of the head. The left side, there's nothing really there because that's where your part line is going to be, and we already went up with a number 2 right there, so there's really nothing there for me to cut. So now what I'm doing is I'm doing my crisscross, and I went from front to back. Now I'm going to go from side to side. And when I lift it up, I can tell exactly with the amount of hair that I missed when I went from front to back. So now that I'm done with the top, what I like to do now is I like to go back and what I call a little bit of detail clipper over comb. And what I'm doing is I'm combing the hair in the direction that the hair sits, and now I just go back and level out my walls and make sure that everything looks nice and neat. Remember, guys, the detail work at the end is what makes the difference between a good haircut and a bad haircut. You have to take your time at the very end and go back and just step back, look at your haircut, and see where you missed and what needs to be redone, what needs to be blended, and make sure all your lines are all nice and straight and everything. Always got to take your time for the detail work. And as you can see right here, what I'm doing is I'm going back with my number 2 Osher, and I'm basically just going up the wall, because what I'm doing is I'm seeing little patches of darker hair, and what we did is a number 2 on the side. So I'm just going up with my number 2 and make sure that there's no patches and it all blends in. Again, right here, I'm going with my clipper over comb, and this is the part where our part's going to be at. Our side part's going to be at. So what I did is I stand in front of the customer and I look as he would see himself when I give him the mirror. Because when you give the customer the mirror and he looks into the mirror, he's looking at angles that you're not going to see unless you're standing right in front of him. So I always recommend that you stand right in front of him and look as if he was looking into a mirror, basically. Again, guys, I can't stress how critical it is for you guys to work on your ending detail. You know, this is the ending detail. This is where it's going to determine how the haircut really comes out. If it's going to come out crispy, or you miss little hairs here and there. So what I'm doing right here now is I'm applying some Suavecito grooming spray, and that's what I like to use when I'm grooming the hair right here. And what I'm going to do is, what Suavecito grooming spray is the hair setter. And what that does is that when you blow dry the Suavecito hair setter, it's gonna, in the direction that you blow dry, that's the direction that the hair is gonna set. So what I'm using right here is using my roller brush, and I'm basically rolling from where his part line is, rolling the other direction. And as I'm rolling it, you can see that I lift it up and I let the hot air hit it and go right through the vent brush, the roller brush. And what that's doing is it's creating a nice little front curl in the front, so that when I apply my pomade, it's just going to apply it on a top texture of it, and it's going to look really nice. If you don't have a roller brush in your arsenal of equipment, I highly recommend that you guys get one. They're great for when you're doing this type of haircut right here, because you get that nice little turn right there, and once you apply your pomade, you're going to get a nice front curl in the front. Especially if you have unmanageable hair, this is a solution for unmanageable hair. So right here, I'm just basically blow drying it in the direction that we want it to set. Using our roller brush and just rolling it through the hair. Getting it all nice and dry. Again, guys, when you guys apply pomade, you should always apply pomade when the hair is completely dry. Pomade works best if the hair is completely dry. If it's not completely dry, especially if you're using water-soluble pomade, then it's just going to eat it up. It's going to just evaporate with all the water in it. What I'm using right here now is Tip Top pomade. That's my go-to pomade. I add a generous amount in my hands, and basically I rub it through my fingers, and it's, for me, as you can see, what I do is I always press the back down nice and flat, and in the front I try not to flatten it. I just put it over the top of the hair. So once I comb it through, it's just going to be more of a topping on the front, and on the back I want it to press down. I want it to sit nice and flat. Again, when you apply the pomade, try not to flatten down the curl or the that we created in the front. As you can see right there, I'm trying to lifting it up, and you get a nice little lift, kind of like a small pompadour in the front. And that effect is created from using the roller brush and the hair setter with a combination of pomade. The final step for the haircut for me right here, guys, is to do our hard part. And as you guys can see, I pretty much already shaped it all out. The hard part's already sitting there. I'm just gonna go in there with my trimmer, and all I do is just dot the line. I don't create a thicker line because I don't like hard parts that are very thick. I think they don't look good. So basically what I do is I just press down on the line, and once I press down on the line, create my line, I run the machine parallel to the line so that it creates a nice defined line. And then the final step here now is to grab my clipper over comb, and once again I'm just gonna go along the sides and just blend it all out. You can see that there's hair sticking out right there on that angle. You could really tell. So what I'm doing right here is just basically blending that side out. Now I'm just gonna grab my comb and comb it through, and I could tell in the back right there there's also hair sticking out. So this is all just detail work at the very end of the haircut. Like I've told you guys in the past, guys, every haircut should end with you using some hot lather and a straight razor. If you're not using a straight razor and hot lather to end your haircuts, then I think you're cheating your customers. You know, you should be using the hot lather and the straight razor. And the reason being is that when the customer's gonna remember that, they're all, like I always say, man, there's no feeling like having that hot lather on your neck. It's a soothing feeling, and they're gonna remember that. That's old school barbering, and it's something that every barber I think should implement. Once I'm done with the straight razor, that's pretty much it for this haircut, guys. Once again, if you guys like my channel, please subscribe. If you guys like this video, give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down. It's all good. Leave me a comment. Any comments you leave me, I will answer you guys. If you guys have any questions about what machines I use or any techniques that I have, let me know and I will answer you. Thank you again for watching.